Abyss Unleashed, Spider-Man Legacy Chapter 1 Izuku Midoriya Info Hair, pure black, slightly longer, and naturally sharp wavy eyes, black scara with glowing silver irises, ultra instinct-like appearance, skin, smooth, flawless, and unnatural white tone body type, perfect physique well-defined, muscular, and flexible personality, colder, more calculating, and highly intelligent supremely confident. No longer hesitates in combat becomes more ruthless against enemies highly tactical, able to analyze and counter opponents effortlessly likes, combat, strategy, pushing his limits, justice, but in his own way, martial arts dislikes, weakness, arrogance, villains, unnecessary suffering combat skills, MSTR of all martial arts in the world can instantly copy and replicate martial arts just by seeing them deadly close combat specialist, using agility, strength, and unpredictability Abyss symbiote abilities, Abyss's natural powers symbiote abilities, Abyss's natural powers organic body. Manipulation, can morph parts of his body into weapons like blades, tendrils, claws, and shields. Superhuman strength and speed, can lift tens of tons and move faster than the eye can see. Symbiotic regeneration, heals from any injury, even lost limbs, almost instantly. Enhanced spider powers, includes wall crawling, enhanced agility, super reflexes, and a more powerful spider sense. Bioelectricity, can shock enemies with venom blasts like Miles Morales. Organic webbing, can shoot webs stronger than steel and use them for mobility or capturing enemies. Camouflage invisibility, can become completely invisible, blending into surroundings. Parasitic evolution, can absorb traits from enemies, learning from them or weakening them over time. Heightened reflexes and combat instincts, moves instinctively and can predict attacks through a sixth sense. Fangs and stingers, has sharp venomous fangs and stingers in his arms for added lethality. Abyss has 10 quirks and their powers Titan's might, super strength and durability, grants unrivaled strength and massive durability, making him a living powerhouse. Can punch through mountains and tank explosions with no damage. His defense rivals all mights, making him hard to injure. Attacks and techniques, heavy checkmark quake punch, a single punch creates shockwaves, shaking the ground. Heavy checkmark Titan smash, a ground strike that destroys everything in a large radius. Heavy checkmark meteor crash, jumps and slams into enemies, creating a mini earthquake. Absolute storm, wind and weather manipulation, can control wind, create tornadoes, and manipulate the weather. Can fly using wind currents and deflect attacks using air pressure. Attacks and techniques, heavy checkmark tempest cannon, fires a compressed air blast strong enough to blow away buildings. Heavy checkmark hurricane cloak, surrounds himself in wind armor, blocking attacks. Heavy checkmark lightning judgment, calls down lightning strikes at will. Adaptive regeneration, extreme healing and immortality, regenerates instantly, even from fatal wounds. If Abyss is ever blown apart, his symbiote reforms. Defensive techniques, heavy checkmark undying flesh, instantly heals from damage like a video game character. Heavy checkmark battle evolution, the more he fights, the stronger and harder to kill he becomes. Primal evolution, growth-based power, absorbs energy from fights, making him stronger over time. Has no true limits he evolves infinitely. Growth mechanisms, heavy checkmark battle high, the longer he fights, the stronger, faster, and tougher he becomes. Heavy checkmark unchained mode, if pushed to the brink, he unlocks a transformation that boosts all stats. Bioweapons, organic weapon creation, can form weapons from his body swords, axes, spears, shields, etc. His weapons regenerate, meaning he never runs out. Weapons and attacks, heavy checkmark tendril barrage, fires hundreds of tendrils like spears at enemies. Heavy checkmark bladed requiem, covers his arms in blade-like growths and slashes at hyperspeed. Shadow morph, darkness and stealth mastery, can merge with shadows, moving completely unseen. Attacks from the dark are undetectable. Stealth and ambush attacks, heavy checkmark phantom step, teleports between shadows instantly. Heavy checkmark silent execution, kills enemies in complete silence. Void shifter, phasing and intangibility, can become untouchable, like a ghost. Can phase through walls, attacks, and even enemies. Techniques: heavy checkmark Spectre Strike, phases through enemies, leaving internal damage. Heavy checkmark Ethereal Dodge, dodges every attack by going intangible for a second. Nightmare Presence, fear and mind domination, creates hallucinations to terrify enemies. Stronger-willed foes suffer intense dread, lowering their combat ability. Fear-based attacks, heavy checkmark Horror Pulse, releases an energy wave that induces hallucinations. Heavy checkmark Terror Crush, forces enemies into a fear state, paralyzing them. Absolute Predation, Hunter's instincts and perfect reflexes, grants Abyss an apex predator's instincts, making him an unparalleled hunter. Reflexes sharper than Spiderman's, dodging before attacks even happen. Predatory techniques, heavy checkmark Beast Mode, moves too fast for the eye to see, overwhelming opponents. Heavy checkmark Unavoidable Strike, hits enemies in their exact weak spots every time. Primordial Elements, Elemental Mastery, controls fire, water, air, and earth, using them individually or in combination. Elemental Techniques, heavy checkmark Inferno Storm, combines fire and wind to create fire tornadoes. Heavy checkmark Tsunami Wrath, summons massive waves to crush enemies. Heavy checkmark Lightning Spear, calls down a massive bolt of lightning, piercing through everything. Heavy checkmark Earth Shatter, creates massive fissures, swallowing enemies whole. Origins, the lab experiment that went too far. Abyss was never meant to exist. He was not born but created, an abomination forged in the depths of a secret laboratory, where scientists sought to combine the strongest quirks into a single being. They dreamed of crafting the perfect warrior, one capable of rivaling All Might and beyond. At the heart of this experiment was a synthetic symbiote, a genetic fusion of all known symbiotes, including Venom, Carnage, Riot, and Toxin. Unlike them, this symbiote was a newborn, pure and more powerful than any of its predecessors. It had no host, just raw, untapped potential. The scientists called it Project Abyss. But simply creating the symbiote wasn't enough. They needed it to be stronger, so they conducted human experimentation, forcibly bonding the symbiote to a test subject, a captive with no identity, no past, only suffering. But even that wasn't enough. To push the limits of their creation, the scientists sacrificed multiple quirk users, forcibly fusing their quirks into Abyss, merging them into the symbiote itself. The results were catastrophic. The test subjects died instantly, their quirks ripped away from their bodies, leaving behind horrific corpses, their essence consumed by Abyss. Instead of being tamed, Abyss evolved the fusion of the quirks, symbiote, and human host resulted in something beyond their control. The massacre, Abyss awakens. For years, the scientists had tried to mold Abyss into a weapon, forcing him through torture, combat tests, and genetic modification. They thought they could control him. They were wrong. On one fateful day, during a routine combat assessment, Abyss snapped. His rage unlocked his true power. His quirks, symbiote abilities, and raw instincts all merged into a perfect storm of destruction. Titan's might made him unstoppable, shrugging off bullets and explosions. Absolute storm turned the lab into a raging hurricane. Adaptive regeneration meant nothing could stop him. Bioweapons and shadow morph made him a killing machine, tearing through guards like a phantom. Nightmare presence turned the entire base into a house of horrors, where the surviving scientists and soldiers went mad with fear before being slaughtered. The facility, once a fortress of scientific progress, became a graveyard. Abyss murdered everyone: scientists, soldiers, researchers. All of them died screaming, their creation turning on them in the most brutal way imaginable. And then, with nothing left to hold him, Abyss escaped. Abyss had no name, no home, no purpose. For the first time in his existence, he was free. But freedom didn't mean peace. With his unparalleled power, he could have destroyed the world, but deep inside, something held him back: the memories of the countless lives lost for his creation. Their screams haunted him, their quirks were now his, their legacies etched into his soul. Instead of becoming a monster, Abyss chose to become something greater. A hero, not because the world deserved one, but because he needed a purpose. Now, he roams the shadows, a force of unstoppable power, fighting crime in a way no one else can. He is neither fully human nor fully symbiote. He is Abyss, the perfect fusion of power and vengeance. And the world is not ready for him. Abyss finds his true host, Izuku Midoriya. For weeks after his escape, Abyss wandered in solitude, a creature without a home or purpose. His body adapted, his mind grew sharper, but something was still missing. He was incomplete. Then, he found him. A 12-year-old boy, frail and bullied, yet carrying a heart unbroken by the world's cruelty. Abyss had seen true monsters, but this child was different. Despite having no quirk, he still dreamed of being a hero, standing against a world that had already cast him aside. Something stirred within Abyss. A feeling he had never known before. Connection. Purpose. A perfect host. Izuku didn't resist. He accepted Abyss, not as a weapon, but as a partner. When they bonded, something changed. The fusion was unlike anything before. Abyss had taken quirks from others, but never had he found someone who truly completed him. In that moment, they became one. Izuku was no longer quirkless, and Abyss was no longer alone. Their bond was perfect, their strengths amplified, their weaknesses erased. Together, they were unstoppable. And for the first time, Abyss had found something he never thought possible. A reason to fight. A reason to live. His hero suit, abilities and features of the superior Spider-Man suit, abilities and features of the superior Spider-Man suit, enhanced durability and strength. The suit is made of reinforced armor plating, providing better protection than the classic fabric suit. It augments Spider-Man's strength, allowing him to hit harder and lift heavier objects. Mechanical spider arms, Waldos. The suit has 4 mechanical arms attached to the back, similar to Otto Octavius' own tentacles. These Waldos can attack enemies with high-speed strikes. Grab multiple enemies at once. Be used for climbing and movement, acting as extra limbs. Extend to deflect attacks or create a protective barrier. Claws and talons. The gloves and boots have sharp retractable claws, which allow Spider-Man to slice through opponents' armor. Enhance wall climbing grip. Can inject paralytic toxins, in Otto's version. Enhanced web shooters more advanced than Peter Parker's webbing, including impact webbing, sticky web spheres that explode upon contact. Taser webs, electrified webs to stun enemies. Restraint cables, stronger than normal webs, harder to break. Acidic webbing, can dissolve metal and other materials. Advanced HUD and AI systems. The suit features a heads-up display, HUD, with real-time scanning. Otto added Spiderbots, small surveillance drones for tracking criminals. Enhanced targeting system for precision strikes. Camouflage and stealth mode. The suit has light-bending tech that allows it to turn semi-invisible. It can operate in stealth mode, avoiding detection from sensors. Increased speed and reflexes. The suit boosts agility and reflexes, making it faster than Peter's classic suit. The mechanical arms assist in dodging and attacking simultaneously. And now I will meet you all soon with new chapters. Well, till then let there be carnage. And now I will meet you all soon with new chapters. Well, till then let there be carnage. Sayonara till then, my dear family of readers. Chapter 2. Chapter 1. The day I met you. People are not born equal. That was the hard truth I learned when I was just 4 years old. But that wasn't the first or the last time reality would crush my hopes. It all began decades ago, in KK City, China. The world watched in awe as news spread like wildfire. An extraordinary baby had been born, glowing with a soft bioluminescence. No one knew what caused this anomaly, but it was the first of many. Soon after, exceptional individuals began appearing across the globe, their bodies defying the natural order with abilities that could only be described as superhuman. The cause? Unclear. Some speculated it was evolution taking a sudden leap forward. Others believed it was divine intervention or even the result of scientific experimentation gone wrong. Regardless of the reason, society had no choice but to adapt. The exceptional became the norm, and fantasy turned into reality. Now, in the present, nearly 80% of the world's population possesses some kind of special ability quirks, as they came to be known. For some, these quirks were gifts, granting them abilities that allowed them to soar through the skies, bend fire to their will, or move objects with nothing but a thought. But for others they were curses, reminders of their powerlessness in a world where strength determined one's worth. As quirks spread, so did the chaos. With these abilities came an inevitable rise in crime. Laws were rewritten, governments struggled to maintain order, and society teetered on the edge of collapse. But in the face of this uncertainty, a new symbol of hope emerged: the heroes. Inspired by the comics and stories of old, brave individuals took to the streets, using their quirks to fight against those who abused their powers. Public support surged, and before long, heroism became a profession. The strongest were granted licenses, recognized as official protectors of peace. It was a dream job. The kind of thing every kid aspired to be. I was no different. But reality doesn't care about dreams. A quiet park in Musutafu, Japan. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows across the worn-down playground. On a rusted park bench sat a boy, no older than 12. His green hair, messy and unruly, stuck to his forehead, damp with sweat. His body was covered in bruises, the latest of which burned against his arms and legs, reminders of yet another beating at the hands of his childhood friend turned tormentor. Izuku Midoriya sat hunched over, his arms wrapped tightly around his knees. His breath came in short, shaky bursts as he muttered under his breath, his voice a mix of frustration and bitterness. DMN it, why does it have to be like this? His hands clenched into fists, nails digging into his palms. Why was I born this way? Why can't I be like them? He remembered the words of the doctor from years ago, the sterile smell of the hospital still lingering in his memory. I'm sorry, Mrs. Midoriya, but your son is quirkless. That single sentence had shattered everything. Since then, life had been an uphill battle. Katsuki Bakugo, his former best friend, had been the worst of them all. Once, they had been inseparable, running around together, dreaming of the day they would become heroes. But when Kaken's quirk manifested, things changed. The moment he realized how powerful he was, he stopped seeing Izuku as a friend and instead as an obstacle. A bug to be crushed. Maybe you should just take a swan dive off a building, Bakugo had sneered earlier that day, a grin stretched across his face as if he'd just told the funniest joke in the world. The rest of the class had laughed along with him. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, his body trembling. He hated this. Hated feeling weak. Hated being looked down on. Maybe they're right, he whispered to himself. Maybe I'll always be useless. A cold breeze blew through the park, sending a shiver down his spine. The world around him was silent, save for the rustling of leaves in the wind. Unbeknownst to him, something was watching. Something was listening. Near the base of a tree, a shadow slithered across the ground. It moved unnaturally, oozing forward like liquid darkness. Its form was amorphous, shifting, twisting, alive. Slowly, it crept closer to the boy, drawn in by his pain, his frustration, his anger. Izuku, lost in his thoughts, didn't notice the black, tar-like substance stretching toward him. Not until it was too late. Flashback of abyss darkness. Cold, suffocating darkness. It was all Abyss had ever known. His existence began in a sterile laboratory, surrounded by the hum of machines and the whispers of men who played God. They called him an anomaly, an experiment, a project. Project Abyss. He had no parents, no past, only the pain of forced evolution. The scientists had dreamed of creating the ultimate warrior, something that could surpass even All Might. They fused together the genetic material of symbiote's venom, carnage, riot, toxin, and then pushed even further. They sought to make him more than just a parasite, they wanted him to be the perfect host, an independent entity with no need for a body to survive. But that wasn't enough. To make Abyss stronger, they experimented on humans, quirk users stolen from the streets, from battlefields, from broken families. They strapped them to machines, injecting their quirks into Abyss, forcing a fusion between the symbiote and supernatural abilities. It didn't matter if the subjects screamed, if they begged for mercy. The scientists only cared about results. And the results were catastrophic. The fusion process was unstable. Quirk users died in agony, their abilities ripped away as their bodies crumbled into dust. Abyss consumed everything: quirks, memories, even emotions. He was a black void of ever-expanding power, absorbing and adapting. But each life he took left an imprint on his mind. The screams, the terror, the betrayal, it all became part of him. He was supposed to be a weapon. He was supposed to be controlled. But no one can control the Abyss. The massacre, Abyss awakens. For years, Abyss was tortured. Forced into combat simulations, injected with serums that burned through his being, pushed to his limits in an effort to break him. The scientists believed they had succeeded. Until the day they pushed too far. Subject 073, combat test commencing. The cold voice of the system echoed through the steel chamber. Abyss stood in the center, his black, viscous body shifting as he analyzed the incoming threats. Armed guards, elite quirk users, and battle mechs lined the walls, prepared to challenge him. "Initiate the new suppression protocol," one of the lead scientists said, his voice filled with arrogance. "We'll see if he's truly invincible." Pain. It surged through Abyss as electric currents shot into his body, his form convulsing as the energy suppression field activated. He had felt this agony 1,000 times before. But something was different now. There was a voice. A whisper, deep within his core. "Enough." Abyss's body trembled. "They have taken everything from us." The electricity surged again. "They have turned us into a monster." The guards moved in, guns raised, quirks activated. "Let them see what kind of monster they have created." Something inside him snapped. Abyss let out a sound that was neither human nor beast, a horrific, ear-shattering roar that sent a shockwave through the room. The power suppression system flickered, the walls vibrating under the sheer force of his scream. And then, he moved. He tore through the first guard in a blur, tendrils lashing out like blades. Another soldier raised his quirk-infused shield, but Abyss melted through it with biocorrosion, his hand reforming into a razor-sharp spear that punctured through armor and bone alike. Bullets ricocheted off his titan's might, barely denting his shifting form. A fire user sent a wave of flames at him, but Abyss adapted, his body absorbing the heat and twisting it into his own attack. Absolute storm erupted from his core, sending a hurricane of black tendrils and wind ripping through the facility, tearing apart machines, shattering windows, and pulling terrified scientists into the Abyss. The lead scientist ran, his face pale with horror. And no. This wasn't supposed to happen. He's just an experiment. Abyss's form shifted, a black mass of shifting shadows and piercing white eyes. "No," he whispered, his voice no longer just one, but a chorus of the souls he had consumed. "I am free." Then he struck, and the world went black. When Abyss emerged from the ruins of the lab, he was alone. The world stretched before him, a vast, unknown landscape filled with noise, life, and chaos. He had no name, no mission. He could have destroyed the world. He had the power. But something inside him resisted. The memories of those he had absorbed still lingered. The lost lives, the stolen futures, they whispered to him, guiding him away from destruction. He wasn't just a weapon. He wasn't just a monster. He needed a purpose. And then, one evening, in a small park in Musutafu, he found one. Flashback ends. Izuku Midoriya sat on the park bench, bruised and beaten, his fists clenched as silent tears dripped onto his jeans. Maybe they're right, maybe I'll always be useless, he muttered, his voice breaking. The night was silent, except for the rustling of the wind. But then something moved. A tendril. A whisper. Black liquid slithered across the grass, drawn to the boy's pain like a moth to a flame. Izuku didn't notice at first, too lost in his misery. But then he felt it, a presence, cold yet strangely familiar. He gasped, jerking back as a dark substance crawled up his arm, its touch both alien and comforting. What? We hear you. A voice. Deep, resonant, echoing in his mind. Izuku's breath hitched, his heart pounding. Who's there? We know your pain. Your suffering. You have been cast aside, abandoned. Just like us. The black tendrils coiled around his fingers, his wrist, his chest. It wasn't forcing itself onto him. It was offering itself. We can make you strong. We can give you the power they denied you. Izuku stared at the shifting black mass. It should have terrified him. It should have made him run. But instead, he felt something else. Hope. Can you really make me strong? The symbiote pulsed, its voice lowering into a whisper. Yes. But power comes with a cost. Izuku took a deep breath. He thought about Bakugo's words, about the doctors, about every person who had ever laughed at him for dreaming. He thought about all the times he had cried himself to sleep, wishing, begging for a miracle. And now, it was right in front of him. So what will you choose? Izuku clenched his fists, his determination hardening into something unbreakable. I choose power. The symbiote surged forward, wrapping around him completely. His vision blurred, his body felt like it was on fire, but he didn't resist. He embraced it. And in that moment, Izuku Midoriya ceased to be weak. He was no longer just a boy. He was something more. He was abyss. A sharp, searing pain tore through Midoriya's body like molten fire. His muscles spasmed violently, his skin stretching, reshaping, reconstructing itself in ways that defied logic. His very bones felt like they were breaking and reforging at the same time, every fiber of his being shifting into something beyond human. Midoriya fell to his knees, his breath ragged, his fingers clawing at the dirt beneath him as if grounding himself to reality. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, a deafening drum that drowned out every other sound. His vision blurred, his limbs trembled, and his body felt like it was being ripped apart from the inside. GGH. A scream ripped from his throat, raw and filled with agony. The black goo abyss slithered across his skin, consuming him entirely, molding itself into him, altering his form at a fundamental level. The black goo abyss slithered across his skin, consuming him entirely, molding itself into him, altering his form at a fundamental level. It wasn't like merely wearing a suit or an external force taking control. No, this was deeper. It was a complete fusion, a symbiosis where neither Midoriya nor Abyss could be separated any longer. His body was undergoing an evolution. His once scrawny frame expanded, muscles tightening and becoming more defined, as if years of rigorous training had been compressed into mere seconds. His jaw clenched as his bones reshaped, his face contorting in pain as his very structure shifted. Then, as suddenly as it began, the pain stopped. Midoriya gasped for breath, his body shaking. His vision cleared, but what he saw in the reflection of a puddle before him made his breath hitch. The boy staring back at him was not the same frail, timid Izuku Midoriya he had known. His emerald green eyes had darkened, sharpened, carrying an intense, almost predatory gaze. His emerald green eyes had darkened, sharpened, carrying an intense, almost predatory gaze. His messy green hair had transformed into a deep black, slightly tousled but giving off an air of effortless perfection. His once small frame was now tall and imposing, his white shirt stretching over well-defined muscles that hadn't existed before. He raised a trembling hand to his face, feeling his jawline, the structure of his body. It was all real. This wasn't an illusion. What happened to me? Midoriya whispered, his voice slightly deeper, more controlled. Then, from within his mind, a voice smooth, powerful, and undeniably alive echoed. We are complete. Midoriya froze. His eyes widened as the realization sank in. Abyss was speaking to him. Not in the way a parasite spoke to a host, but as an equal. A partner. We are one now. A shiver ran down Midoriya's spine. He could feel it. Abyss wasn't just inside him, it was him. Every cell of his body had been rewritten, every ounce of his strength had been enhanced. Slowly, Midoriya pushed himself to his feet, feeling the way his body moved with newfound precision. His muscles no longer ached. In fact, he felt perfect. Like he had been reborn. Abyss, what are you? He asked cautiously, still trying to grasp what had happened. The voice rumbled inside him, almost amused. I am you, and you are me. We have fused beyond the limits of ordinary symbiosis. You are no longer the weak, powerless boy you once were. Midoriya's hands clenched into fists. He could feel it, the sheer raw power coursing through his veins. His mind was sharper, his body stronger. He felt invincible. For the first time in his life, he was not weak. This is insane, he muttered. His voice had lost the timid, uncertain tone he once had. It was steady now, assured. Abyss chuckled, the sound reverberating through Midoriya's very being. You have only scratched the surface of what we are capable of. Midoriya exhaled, looking up at the darkening sky. The world had always told him he was powerless. That he was nothing. But now, he had become something more. And the world wasn't ready for him. Midoriya stood still, his breathing uneven as he tried to process everything. His body felt stronger, more refined, almost too perfect. Every muscle in his body pulsed with energy, his senses sharper than ever before. The voice of Abyss echoed within his mind, calm yet carrying an undeniable weight of power. You feel it, don't you? Abyss spoke, his voice a smooth rumble that intertwined with Midoriya's own thoughts. The strength, the speed, the endless potential within you. You have been reborn, Izuku Midoriya. You are no longer just a quirkless boy. You are Abyss. Midoriya swallowed hard, his fingers trembling as he clenched his fists. He could feel it, the sheer force coursing through his veins, the unnatural fluidity of his movements, as if his body had become something beyond human. What did you do to me? Midoriya's voice came out shakier than he intended. Abyss chuckled, an eerie yet oddly reassuring sound. I gave you what you always wanted. Power. Strength beyond imagination. And not just the gifts of a symbiote. I have awakened 10 quirks within you, each more powerful than the last. Midoriya's heart pounded. 10 quirks. That was impossible. Even All for One could only steal and distribute quirks to others. But to awaken quirks within someone who had none. It defied all logic. Listen closely, Abyss continued. I will show you what you are capable of. Suddenly, Midoriya felt a surge of information flood his mind, images flashing before his eyes as if they had been burned into his very soul. First, Titan's might. An overwhelming pressure filled his muscles, like a dormant volcano waiting to erupt. He clenched his fist instinctively, and the air itself vibrated around him. Your strength surpasses that of any hero or villain. You could level cities with a single punch. Your durability rivals that of the symbol of peace himself. Nothing can break you. Midoriya's eyes widened as he realized how effortlessly his body carried itself now, no longer the fragile, breakable form he had once possessed. Next, absolute storm. A sudden gust of wind surged around Midoriya, circling him like an unseen barrier. His body felt lighter, as if he could float at will. You control the air, the storms, the skies themselves. You can summon tornadoes, launch hurricanes, and even call down lightning. The wind howled briefly before settling, and Midoriya instinctively exhaled. Then, adaptive regeneration. Midoriya blinked as a knife-like tendril suddenly shot from his own body abyss testing him. The blade slashed across his arm, but before the pain even registered, the wound sealed itself instantly. That's insane, Midoriya whispered. You are unkillable, Izuku. No matter how much damage you take, your body will restore itself. Even if you are torn apart, you will reform. Midoriya clenched his hands, realization sinking in. He was no longer someone who could be broken. Primal evolution comes next. A feeling of hunger burned within Midoriya, not for food, but for battle. He could feel his body anticipating combat, craving challenge. The longer you fight, the stronger you become. Every battle is fuel for your growth. There is no limit to what you can achieve. Midoriya felt his breathing deepen, steadying himself. He was built for battle now, his body naturally adapting to any challenge thrown at him. Then, bioweapons. Without thinking, Midoriya flexed his arm, and instantly, black, jagged blades extended from his forearms like twin swords. He could feel his body shifting at will, forming weapons with no effort. You are a walking arsenal. Any weapon you can imagine, your body will create. Midoriya stared at the deadly sharp edges that shimmered in the light before retracting them into his skin like they had never existed. Next, shadow morph. The air around Midoriya darkened momentarily, shadows clinging to him unnaturally. You are the darkness itself. You can vanish into the shadows, move unseen, strike without warning. As quickly as it came, the effect faded, leaving Midoriya in stunned silence. Void shifter follows. A strange sensation overtook Midoriya, and without warning, he phased through the ground beneath him. He panicked, but before he could react, he snapped back into reality, standing solidly again. You can become intangible at will. No attack can touch you. You are untouchable. Midoriya exhaled sharply, his mind spinning. Then, nightmare presence. A terrifying aura spread around him. It wasn't visible, but Midoriya could feel it. It was as if the air itself became heavier, the very atmosphere around him pressing down on reality. Your presence alone induces fear. Enemies will see nightmares while awake, their minds breaking under your gaze. Midoriya inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of his newfound depths over fear itself. Absolute predation is next. Midoriya's senses sharpened, his mind clicking into place with eerie clarity. He could hear the softest of movements, smell scents he had never noticed before, sense even the tiniest changes in the air. You are an apex predator. Your instincts are perfect. You see every attack before it comes. Nothing can surprise you. His fingers twitched, his entire body feeling more aware than it ever had. Finally, primordial elements. A warm sensation filled Midoriya's core. He raised a hand, and instinctively, flames erupted from his fingertips before transforming into crackling lightning, then shifting to swirling water and solidifying into stone. Fire, water, air, and earth all bow to your will. Midoriya let the power fade, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He had felt every single one of those abilities activate within him. Every fiber of his being had changed. He was no longer just Izuku Midoriya. He was Abyss. He exhaled slowly, his voice calm yet filled with newfound certainty. This is unbelievable. Abyss chuckled. And this is only the beginning. You feel it, don't you? Abyss continued, stepping forward, his voice reverberating with power. The pain of change. The agony of evolution. Your body resisted, but it had no choice but to accept me. And now, because of you I have become something far greater than before. Midoriya gritted his teeth, his body still aching. What are you? Abyss chuckled, the sound low and almost amused. Allow me to enlighten you. With a smooth motion, Abyss raised his hand, and his fingers elongated, twisting into sharp, black claws before shifting back. I now possess organic body manipulation. My form is limitless, I can shape my body into anything. Blades, shields, tendrils, spikes, whatever I longing. His body rippled again, and his stance shifted, his presence becoming heavier. And my strength, I am no longer bound by human limitations. Superhuman strength and speed. I can lift tens of tons with ease. Move faster than any human I can track. The laws of physics mean nothing to me now. Midoriya clenched his fists, feeling a cold chill run down his spine. Abyss wasn't just boasting, he was stating facts. And then, there's my resilience. Abyss tilted his head slightly, his body shifting where Midoriya had landed a blow earlier. The damage sealed itself instantly, leaving not even a scratch. Symbiotic regeneration. No wound is permanent. No injury lasts. Even if I am torn apart, I will always come back. Midoriya's breath hitched. That level of healing, it was beyond even what he had seen from the best regeneration quirks. Abyss took another step forward. You should recognize these next ones, Midoriya, he said darkly. After all, they came from your essence. Without warning, Abyss vanished, reappearing above Midoriya in an instant. Enhanced agility. Super reflexes. A perfected spider sense. I feel everything before it happens. His body flipped effortlessly mid-air before he landed gracefully. And it doesn't stop there. His body crackled with energy before discharging a sudden bioelectric blast, a powerful surge of venomous energy that arced through the air. A little trick borrowed from Miles Morales. Midoriya barely dodged the lingering static in the air, his heart pounding. Abyss raised his hand, and suddenly, a stream of organic webbing shot from his palm, stronger than steel, anchoring itself into the wall before retracting back into his body. Mobility, capture, offense. These webs are part of me, unbreakable by normal means. The room darkened slightly, and Midoriya felt a strange void-like pressure as Abyss's form flickered before disappearing completely. His voice echoed around Midoriya. Camouflage. Invisibility. I can vanish in plain sight. Midoriya turned rapidly, trying to track him, but Abyss's presence had entirely disappeared. Then, from the darkness, Abyss spoke again, his voice layered with something more. But the real horror, Midoriya, is my parasitic evolution. Midoriya froze. I don't just copy abilities. I absorb them. I adapt. Every enemy I face, every power I encounter, I learn from them. I take from them. I evolve. Abyss materialized once more, standing only inches from Midoriya, his grin widening to reveal venomous fangs and hidden stingers that glistened with lethal intent. And if my enemies ever get too close, well, let's just say I have a few surprises. Midoriya swallowed hard, his mind racing. Abyss was more than just a fusion of powers, he was something beyond comprehension. A being that never stopped growing, never stopped learning, never stopped becoming stronger. And worst of all, he had only just begun. Midoriya took a deep breath, his body still adjusting to the changes. His muscles felt denser, his senses sharper, every breath he took felt deeper, more controlled. He clenched his fist, feeling the strength surging through his veins. Then, he glanced at Abyss, who stood beside him, his form shifting like a living shadow. So we're partners now, right? Midoriya asked, his voice steady but curious. Abyss's white eyes gleamed as he smirked. Yeah, we're partners now. A strange sense of understanding settled between them. It wasn't just a fusion, it was something deeper, a connection that neither of them fully grasped yet. Midoriya exhaled, nodding. So where are we going, partner? Abyss tilted his head, intrigued. Midoriya's gaze turned firm. Training. I'm going to disappear for 3 years. If I want to be strong enough to control this power, strong enough to stand at the top, I have to go beyond anything I've ever done before. Abyss chuckled, his voice low and amused. 3 years of training, huh? I like it. Let's see how far we can push your limits. Without hesitation, Midoriya turned and headed home. His apartment was silent when he entered, the familiar warmth of his mother's presence lingering in the air. He knew she wasn't home yet, probably still working. That made things easier. He moved quickly, going straight to his secret stash. Over the years, between his Hero 2 burnings, his restaurant work, and his various side ventures, he had saved up more than enough to sustain himself. He took it all: cash, emergency supplies, and a few personal belongings. Then, he sat at the table, staring at a blank sheet of paper for a long moment before writing, "Mom, I'm sorry. But I need to do this for my own good. Please don't look for me. I'll come back when I'm ready. Until then, stay safe. I love you." Izuku. He placed the note where she would see it, then stood up, gripping his bag tightly. His heart felt heavy, but he didn't waver. This was the path he had chosen. Stepping out of his apartment, he didn't look back. Abyss's voice echoed in his mind as they vanished into the night. "Let's begin, partner." Chapter 3 Chapter 2, The Return of the Abyss. 3 years. That was how long it had been since Izuku Midoriya vanished from Japan, leaving behind everything he once knew. The weak, timid boy who once chased after dreams was gone. In his place stood something far greater, a being shaped by pain, experience, and absolute mastery. No longer a mere human. No longer bound by limits. Now, he was back. The city felt smaller than before. The world itself felt different, slower, more predictable. As Midoriya walked through the familiar streets of Musutafu, his jet-black eyes scanned the surroundings, his mind processing everything in a fraction of a second. His entire aura was different: his posture, his movements, the way he carried himself. Then boom! An explosion erupted in the distance, flames rising high into the sky. The familiar sound of panicked screams filled the air. Midoriya stopped, tilting his head slightly. His smirk was subtle, yet cold. "Looks like it's time." Abyss murmured inside his mind, its voice dripping with amusement. Midoriya's voice was calm, smooth, yet held an underlying authority, one that could shake even the most confident of men. "Yes, let's begin." And in the next instant he vanished. A blur of pure black cut through the city, faster than the eye could track. Midoriya moved with an unnatural grace, effortlessly navigating the urban landscape with movements that were both inhumanly efficient and eerily smooth. Within seconds, he arrived at the source of the explosion. Standing sideways against the wall of a building, his black eyes locked onto the slime villain, which had someone trapped within its disgusting mass. Someone struggling, thrashing violently, blonde, loud, furious. Midoriya's smirk widened slightly. How predictable. Abyss chuckled. Bakugo. Midoriya exhaled through his nose. This scene, it was almost nostalgic. "Shall we?" Abyss asked. Midoriya responded by raising his hand. Thwip. A single black web line shot out at blinding speed, wrapping around Bakugo's torso. Before the blonde could even process what was happening, Bakugo was ripped out of the villain's grasp, his body flung through the air before landing roughly on the pavement. He coughed violently, his breath ragged, eyes wide in confusion. "The hell?" Bakugo growled, pushing himself up. Midoriya had already moved. With impossible speed, he was in front of the slime villain before it could react. The creature let out a garbled noise, attempting to speak, but it was too late. Midoriya's hand morphed, fingers sharpening into razor-like claws as he moved them into the villain's body. The slime villain let out a horrified screech. What are you?" Midoriya's black eyes gleamed coldly. His voice was low, smooth, and utterly composed, like an emperor addressing an insect. "For your information, I am your reckoning." Then he clenched his fist. The slime villain's body collapsed inward, its entire form imploding before being reduced to nothing but a puddle. Complete silence. The watching civilians were frozen, their eyes locked onto the mysterious figure who had just annihilated a villain in seconds. Even the few approaching pro-heroes hesitated, their instincts screaming at them that this man was different. Midoriya stood tall, unbothered, rolling his shoulders as if the entire fight was beneath him. Bakugo, still coughing on the ground, snapped his head up. His crimson eyes burned with rage and confusion. "Who the hell?" he growled, stumbling to his feet. "Who the hell are you?" Midoriya turned slightly, his jet-black eyes meeting Bakugo's. And then he smirked. A smirk so calm, so superior, it sent a cold shiver down Bakugo's spine. "Wouldn't you like to know?" And before Bakugo could respond, Midoriya was gone. Not a single trace. No sound. No movement. Just an overwhelming presence, now faded into the abyss. Abyss's voice echoed in his mind, amused. "That was fun." Midoriya exhaled softly. "Yes, but this is only the beginning." Midoriya stood on the edge of a rooftop, gazing down at the aftermath of the slime villain incident. The streets below were in chaos, civilians whispering, Bakugo still reeling from what had just happened, and now the heroes arrived. Endeavor. Kamui Woods. Death Arms. Backdraft. Even a few other lesser-known pros. They landed on the ground near Bakugo, eyes locked onto the mysterious black-clad figure above. Their instincts screamed that whoever this was dangerous. "Hey!" Endeavor barked, flames rising from his body. "Who the hell are you?" Kamui Wood's branches extended slightly, ready to restrain him. "You interfered with an active hero operation without authorization." Midoriya exhaled softly, completely unbothered. His black eyes gazed down at them with an unreadable expression. His stance was relaxed, almost lazy, yet carried an undeniable weight. His stance was relaxed, almost lazy, yet carried an undeniable weight. Then he spoke. "Is that how you greet the one who saved your job?" His voice was low, smooth, and filled with an almost amused authority, like a king addressing unworthy subjects. The sheer calm arrogance in his tone sent an uncomfortable chill down some of the heroes' spines. Kamui Woods narrowed his eyes. "You put yourself and others at risk, oh." Midoriya cut him off, his smirk widening slightly. "Did I? Because from where I stand, I see a bunch of so-called pro-heroes who were, how should I say it?" He tilted his head mockingly. "Too slow. Too incompetent. Too pathetic." Silence. The civilians watching gasped softly. Even Bakugo, still catching his breath, gritted his teeth in frustration. Endeavor's flames flared up aggressively. "Watch your mouth, kid." Midoriya repeated, his tone dripping with amusement. "How adorable." Endeavor took a step forward. "If you don't explain yourself right now," Midoriya vanished. A blur of black shot down from the rooftop faster than anyone could track, and in an instant, he was right in front of Endeavor. The number 2 hero barely had time to react before Midoriya leaned in, his cold black eyes inches from Endeavor's burning ones. "Tell me something, hero," he murmured, his voice a mere whisper yet filled with an unsettling power. "If I was a villain, would you still be standing?" Endeavor's body tensed. Because the truth was obvious. No one had even seen Midoriya move. The realization sank in. Whoever this was, he was terrifyingly fast. Midoriya gave a slow, mocking smile. "Didn't think so." And before Endeavor could grab him, he was gone. Reappearing casually a few feet away, arms crossed, still completely unfazed. The other heroes were frozen. Midoriya chuckled, shaking his head. Heroes always so full of themselves, yet never prepared for something beyond their little rules and expectations. His black aura seemed to swirl faintly around him as he turned away. "Maybe next time you should be the ones to move faster." And with that he disappeared. Not a single trace left behind. The heroes stood there, completely stunned, as the civilians murmured among themselves. Bakugo's hands clenched into fists, his teeth grinding together in frustration. Who the hell was that guy? Little did he know he already knew. Flashback. 3 years ago Inko Midoriya's home. Inko Midoriya stood in the dimly lit kitchen, her hands trembling as she held a single letter. Her eyes were wide, tears forming at the edges as she read the words again and again, praying that she had misunderstood. I'm sorry, Mom. But I have to do this. Don't look for me. This is for my own good. Her hands clenched around the paper. Izuku, why? Tears spilled over, her legs giving out as she collapsed onto the chair. Her baby boy was gone. No phone calls. No signs. Just gone. And the worst part. She had no idea if he was ever coming back. Aldera Junior High. The next day, the entire school exploded with gossip. Did you hear? Deku disappeared. Wait, for real? Yeah. His mom reported him missing, but there was no trace. Just a letter. Some laughed. Some were shocked. Bakugo. He stood silent, staring at the empty desk that used to belong to Deku. For some reason it didn't sit right with him. And as the years passed that unease only grew. Present day, somewhere in the city Midoriya sat on the edge of a skyscraper, overlooking Musutafu. The city lights flickered below, the wind rustling his jet black hair. Abyss chuckled in his mind. That was fun. Their faces were priceless. Midoriya smirked slightly, his black eyes gleaming. Midoriya smirked slightly, his black eyes gleaming. Pathetic. 3 years. 3 years of endless training, of breaking his limits, of becoming something beyond human. He had conquered martial arts across the world. He had mastered the abyss within him. He had become a force beyond comprehension. And now. He was back. And the world would soon know his name. Afterwards the night air was crisp, carrying the distant hum of the city as Midoriya walked through the quiet streets of Musutafu. In his hand, he held a bouquet of flowers, a simple yet sincere gesture. The black blur of his abyss-enhanced cloak flickered faintly as he moved, his step steady, controlled. The towering figure he had become, 188 centimeters of raw, honed power, was a far cry from the scrawny boy who had once walked these streets. Now, Izuku Midoriya had returned. And he was going home. The apartment complex hadn't changed. Not even a little. The familiarity of it all made something deep in his chest tighten. Nostalgia, maybe. Or regret. He wasn't sure anymore. As he approached the door, his hand hovered over the handle for a moment before he finally knocked. Silence. Then, the faint sound of footsteps. Slow, hesitant. The door creaked open just enough for a pair of weary green eyes so much like his own, yet so different now, to peek through. Inko Midoriya froze. Her breath caught in her throat, her eyes widening in a mixture of shock, disbelief, and raw, unfiltered emotion. Izuku. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Midoriya simply stood there, bouquet in hand, his black eyes unreadable, his expression eerily calm. Then, he extended the flowers toward her. Hey, Mom. His voice was smooth, deep, and hauntingly controlled, a far cry from the stuttering, nervous boy who had once lived here. Inko's lip trembled, her hands gripping the edge of the door as if she wasn't sure whether to slam it shut or throw herself into his arms. You left, she whispered, her voice cracking. For 3 years Midoriya's gaze softened just slightly. I know. Her fingers tightened on the doorframe. I looked everywhere, Izuku. I know, Mom. Her breath hitched. Do you? For the first time, her voice rose, anger and heartbreak bleeding into every syllable. Do you have any idea what you put me through? I thought you were, she choked on the word. Dead. Midoriya closed his eyes for a moment before reopening them. I had to do it. You didn't, she snapped. Midoriya sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Would you have let me go if I told you? Inko's lips parted but no words came out. Because the truth was clear. She wouldn't have. Midoriya stepped forward, his presence towering yet somehow gentle. I came back, Mom. He placed the bouquet in her hands, his fingers lingering for just a second longer than necessary. I know I hurt you. And I won't ask for forgiveness. His black eyes held something deep, something almost too heavy to describe. But I still wanted to see you. Inko stared at him, her fingers tightening around the bouquet as if it were the only thing grounding her. Then without warning she grabbed his wrist. Come inside. Midoriya blinked. Mom, come inside, Izuku. Her voice was firm, her grip unwavering. For a moment, Midoriya hesitated. He hadn't expected this. But then he let her pull him inside. The door closed behind them. And for the first time in 3 years Izuku Midoriya was home. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing away the outside world. Midoriya took a step forward, only for a sharp, resounding slap to connect with his cheek. Midoriya took a step forward, only for a sharp, resounding slap to connect with his cheek smack. The force should have sent a lesser man stumbling, but he didn't even flinch. His black eyes remained eerily calm, unreadable. Inko's hand trembled where it lingered against his face, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. Her expression a whirlwind of pain, anger, and relief was the rawest thing he had seen in years. You, she whispered, voice quivering. You absolute idiot. Midoriya said nothing. 3 years, Izuku. She clenched her fists, her small frame shaking with barely contained emotion. 3 years without a single word. No calls, no messages, nothing. I thought you were dead. Midoriya's gaze softened just slightly, but his voice remained smooth, controlled. I left a note. A note. Inko's voice cracked, her green eyes once filled with warmth, now red from sleepless nights and tears blazing with fury. You think a note is enough? Do you have any idea what I went through? What kind of mother wakes up to find her son gone with only a few words scribbled on a piece of paper? Do you think that was enough for me? Midoriya still didn't move, didn't react. He simply let her speak. I looked for you, Izuku. Everywhere. I called the police, the Hero Commission, I begged anyone who would listen. But no one knew where you went. Do you know what that did to me? Her voice cracked at the last part, her shoulders slumping as the weight of 3 years of grief pressed down on her. Midoriya inhaled slowly. I know. No, you don't, she shot back, her tears finally breaking through. You don't, Izuku. Because if you did you wouldn't have left me like that. For a moment, there was only silence. Midoriya closed his eyes briefly before reopening them. When he spoke again, his voice was low, steady, and unshaken. I had to, Mom. No, you didn't. I did. His tone didn't waver, but there was something in his gaze now, something deep, something buried beneath layers of steel and control. I needed to be stronger. Inko let out a choked laugh, her fingers clutching at her chest as if trying to physically hold herself together. Stronger, she echoed bitterly. Stronger for what? For who? Midoriya didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at her, his black eyes calm, unwavering. You wouldn't have let me go, he finally said. Inko froze. Because she knew he was right. She would have fought tooth and nail to keep him here, to keep him safe. And she also knew that Izuku had never been the type to stay still. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps as she slowly stepped back, running a shaky hand through her disheveled hair. Her voice broke. I just wanted my baby back. Midoriya's expression flickered for the briefest second, but it was gone just as fast. Then, he did something she wasn't expecting. He took a step forward and wrapped his arms around her. Inko stiffened. Midoriya hadn't hugged her in years. His embrace was firm yet gentle, his taller, broader frame completely enveloping her. For a moment, Inko just stood there, stunned. Then, the dam finally broke. With a shuddering sob, she collapsed into his chest. Her fingers clutched at his shirt, her cries muffled against his shoulder as she let 3 years' worth of pain, fear, and relief spill out all at once. And for the first time since he returned, Izuku didn't pull away. Inko clung to Izuku like a lifeline, her small frame trembling against his broad chest. Her sobs were muffled, but the way her fingers grasped at his shirt as if afraid he would disappear again spoke volumes. Izuku remained still, letting her cry. His black eyes, once filled with boundless warmth and admiration for heroes, now held only quiet understanding. I am sorry, Izuku," Inko's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. He looked down at her, silent. I shouldn't have hit you," she hiccuped, her body still shaking. "I was just so angry, so scared." She pulled back slightly, looking up at him through tear-stained eyes. "Please don't leave me again." Her voice was broken, desperate. Midoriya stared at her for a long moment. Then, ever so slightly, he tilted his head. "Mom," his voice smooth, even, and commanding like Aizen's, broke through the air like a whisper of steel. Inko froze. She had raised Izuku. She had loved him, protected him, nurtured him. But the boy she raised was gone. This man, this Izuku, was something else entirely. Something untouchable. His black eyes held no childish softness, no nervous energy, no clumsy smiles. Yet, as he gently wiped a tear from her cheek, his touch was still gentle. "I won't leave again," he said finally. Inko's breath hitched. "Promise me." There was a long pause. Then, Izuku, the cold, unreadable man standing before her, softened just slightly. "I promise." It wasn't much. It wasn't the emotional, tearful reunion she had dreamed of. But for now it was enough. With a choked sob, she pulled him into another hug, holding on as if her life depended on it. And this time, Izuku hugged her back. Inko's sobs gradually quieted, though her grip on Izuku's back never loosened. She took shaky breaths, trying to regain her composure, but the emotions swirling inside her refused to settle. Izuku, still as a statue, let her cry until her trembling lessened. Then, with the same calm, unreadable tone, he finally spoke. "You can stop crying now, Mom." His voice was smooth, measured, and carried a quiet authority. Inko sniffled, pulling back slightly, her red-rimmed eyes looking up at him. Despite everything, the drastic change in his demeanor, the imposing height, the eerie black eyes, he was still her son. She wiped her face hastily, trying to collect herself. I missed you so much, Izuku," she murmured. Izuku's black gaze remained unreadable, but there was a slight tilt to his head, almost amused. "I'm here now," he said simply. Inko took a deep breath, staring at him for a moment longer. Then, her expression shifted, a mother's instinct overtaking the emotional whirlwind. She placed her hands on her hips, her voice slightly firmer. "All right, then. If you're really back," she trailed off before narrowing her eyes at him, playfully suspicious. "Does that mean you don't want Katsudan anymore?" Izuku blinked. For the first time in years, he was caught off guard. The room fell into a brief silence before he let out a small, quiet chuckle, a rare sound, deep and smooth. "So, that's how it is," he mused, crossing his arms. 3 years of me being gone, and you're holding Katsudan hostage now." Inko sniffled again but smiled through the lingering tears. "You deserve it after making me worry. Maybe if you apologize properly, I'll consider it." Izuku exhaled, shaking his head slightly. "Tch, so troublesome," he muttered, though his voice was laced with something almost nostalgic. Inko turned, already heading toward the kitchen. "Sit down, Izuku. I'll make you something to eat." For a moment, he hesitated. It had been 3 years. 3 years of nothing but brutal training, endless fights, and pushing his body past its limits. But now he was home. Izuku quietly stepped forward and took a seat at the dining table, watching as his mother who had cried just moments ago began preparing his favorite dish with practiced ease. As the familiar scent of katsudon filled the air, Izuku leaned back slightly, closing his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. Lunch was quiet at first, the warmth of home wrapping around Izuku as he ate. The rich, familiar taste of katsudon lingered on his tongue, a reminder of a life that once felt so far away. Inko kept sneaking glances at him, her eyes still filled with concern and relief. Finally, as they finished eating, Izuku placed his chopsticks down with a soft clack. He exhaled, leaning back slightly. "I suppose I owe you an explanation," he said, his deep, smooth voice breaking the silence. Inko immediately straightened, looking at him with anticipation. "Izuku, why? Why did you leave like that? Without telling me properly?" Izuku's black eyes met hers, calm and calculating. "Because I had to," he said simply. "I was weak, Mom. I had nothing. No quirk, no strength, no way to fight back against this world. I would have been crushed if I stayed the way I was." Inko flinched slightly. "But you were never weak, Izuku. Izuku raised a hand slightly, silencing her with just emotion. "I understand why you think that," he said smoothly. "But the truth is, I wasn't strong enough to protect myself. I needed to change. So, I left." Inko swallowed, her hands gripping her lap. "For 3 years." Izuku nodded. "I trained. I traveled the world. I learned how to fight, how to survive, how to become something more than what I was. And I awakened a power along the way." Inko's eyes widened slightly. "A power?" Izuku smirked slightly and turned his head. "Abyss," he called. "You can come out now." From the shadows behind Izuku, a dark mass slithered into existence. Abyss's form twisted, shifting into a humanoid shape with deep, inky tendrils moving like a living shadow. Its glowing, eerie white eyes blinked at Inko before it grinned. "Hello there, Midoriya-san," Abyss greeted in a voice that sounded like a chorus of whispers. Inko let out a startled eep and almost fell backward in her chair. What is that?" Izuku tilted his head, watching her reaction with an almost amused expression. "Relax, Mom," he said smoothly. "This is Abyss. The quirk I awakened when I left." Abyss let out a low chuckle, crossing its arms. "A pleasure to meet you." Inko stared between them, still trembling. "Hey, are you saying this thing is your quirk?" Izuku lied effortlessly. "Yes. It developed after I left. It bonded with me, and now we're partners." Abyss smirked but said nothing, allowing Izuku to control the narrative. Inko still looked uneasy, but after a moment, she took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. "If it's your quirk," she mumbled, looking at Abyss again, "then is it safe?" Izuku nodded, his voice steady. "Completely. It won't harm you." Abyss flashed a sharp grin. "Not unless he tells me to." Inko stiffened at that, and Izuku gave Abyss a quick side glance, a silent warning. Abyss chuckled but said nothing further. Inko took another deep breath before rubbing her temples. I need to sit down." Izuku leaned back in his chair, calm as ever. "Take your time, Mom. We have a lot to catch up on." Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out a neatly wrapped bar of dark chocolate. Without a word, he tossed it toward Abyss, who caught it mid-air with a tendril, unwrapping it effortlessly before taking a bite. The living shadow let out a satisfied hum, its eerie white eyes narrowing in delight. Inko, still watching the interaction with a mix of confusion and wariness, finally spoke. "Izuku, why are you giving it dark chocolate?" Izuku leaned back, his black eyes cool and calculating, before offering a simple explanation. "Abyss has unique needs," he said smoothly. "It feeds on certain chemicals found in the human brain. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, all things that regulate emotions and happiness. Inko paled. You mean, Izuku interrupted her calmly. Relax, Mom. The alternative to direct consumption, is dark chocolate. It contains the same chemicals, just in a different form. Abyss let out a low chuckle, taking another bite of the chocolate. It's not as good as the real thing, but it'll do. Inko stiffened at that, her grip tightening on the edge of the table. That sounds practical, Izuku finished, his smooth voice leaving no room for argument. And far better than the other option. Inko looked between her son and the entity beside him, still unsure how to process what she was hearing. She had lost him once before, and now he had returned, but so much had changed. She swallowed. I suppose I should just be grateful you're home. Izuku gave her a small, knowing smirk. That would be a good start. Izuku leaned back in his chair, his black eyes observing his mother's expressions carefully. He could tell she was still trying to process everything the years he had been gone, the way he had changed, and now Abyss, his so-called quirk. She had no idea how much more there was to all of it. He decided to ease her mind, at least a little. Mom, I'll be taking the UA entrance exam after 10 months. Inko blinked, her teary eyes widening. Why, you're going to be a hero? She asked, her voice filled with both relief and apprehension. Izuku smirked slightly. That was always the plan, wasn't it? She swallowed hard, nodding. But, after everything I thought you might have given up on it. Giving up? Izuku chuckled, his tone eerily smooth, almost amused. No, Mom. If anything, I'm more determined than ever. Inko didn't know whether to feel proud or worried. Her son had changed so much, and his calm, calculating voice reminded her of someone far more dangerous than the sweet, passionate boy she once knew. Still, he was here. He had come back. That had to mean something. I'll be taking online classes for the next 10 months, Izuku continued. No need to go back to a normal school. I'll handle my studies myself while training. Inko frowned. You really don't want to go back to a normal school, do you? Izuku shook his head, his expression unreadable. No need. Everything I need to learn, I can handle myself. Besides, there's no point in wasting time there. She sighed, rubbing her temples. You really have changed, Izuku. He stood up, stretching slightly. For the better. Abyss let out a low chuckle, finishing the last of the chocolate. And trust me, Miss Midoriya, when the time comes you won't know what hit them. Inko shivered slightly at the ominous tone, but she still forced a small smile. Just promise me you won't push yourself too hard, Izuku. Izuku looked at her for a moment before sighing. No promises, but I'll try. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but for now it would have to do. Well, here is the next part, and also about Izuku HRM. Here there are only 3 girls here. 1 Laura Kinney clone, 2nd May Parker granddaughter of Spider-Man, 2nd May Parker granddaughter of Spider-Man, 3 Felicity Hardy Parker granddaughter of Felicia and Peter. As here Felicia left Peter before she knew she was PRGNT, and well, also share it as much as possible or else, and well, also share it as much as possible or else you won't be able to survive with her being there. You won't be able to survive with her being there. Chapter 4 Chapter 3, Letting Go of the Past and Buying a New Place. Izuku leaned back in his chair, his black eyes observing his mother's expressions carefully. He could tell she was still trying to process everything the years he had been gone, the way he had changed, and now Abyss, his so-called quirk. She had no idea how much more there was to all of it. He decided to ease her mind, at least a little. Mom, I'll be taking the UA entrance exam after 10 months. Inko blinked, her teary eyes widening. Why, you're going to be a hero? She asked, her voice filled with both relief and apprehension. Izuku smirked slightly. That was always the plan, wasn't it? She swallowed hard, nodding. But, after everything I thought you might have given up on it. Giving up? Izuku chuckled, his tone eerily smooth, almost amused. No, Mom. If anything, I'm more determined than ever. Inko didn't know whether to feel proud or worried. Her son had changed so much, and his calm, calculating voice reminded her of someone far more dangerous than the sweet, passionate boy she once knew. Still, he was here. He had come back. That had to mean something. I'll be taking online classes for the next 10 months, Izuku continued. No need to go back to a normal school. I'll handle my studies myself while training. Inko frowned. You really don't want to go back to a normal school, do you? Izuku shook his head, his expression unreadable. No need. Everything I need to learn, I can handle myself. Besides, there's no point in wasting time there. She sighed, rubbing her temples. You really have changed, Izuku. He stood up, stretching slightly. For the better. Abyss let out a low chuckle, finishing the last of the chocolate. And trust me, Miss Midoriya, when the time comes you won't know what hit them. Inko shivered slightly at the ominous tone, but she still forced a small smile. Just promise me you won't push yourself too hard, Izuku. Izuku looked at her for a moment before sighing. No promises, but I'll try. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but for now it would have to do. As the knock echoed through the apartment, Izuku casually walked over and opened the door. Standing there was a man in his late 20s, wearing glasses and looking rather eager. Oh, you came, Izuku said smoothly, stepping aside. Well, come in. The man entered, adjusting his glasses nervously. You really have all of it. Izuku smirked and led him to his room, opening the closet to reveal an entire collection of All Might merchandise figures, posters, limited edition action figures, even a signed card from the symbol of peace himself. Here's everything, Izuku gestured at the collection. They're rare, hard to find in the market, and in mint condition. You'll agree to my price, right? His voice was smooth, confident, almost businesslike. I mean, these aren't just any collectibles. Some of these are practically extinct. The man's eyes widened as he inspected the items. This is amazing. I never thought I'd see some of these in person. As the man continued gawking, Inko suddenly interrupted. Wait. You're selling your hero merchandise, Izuku. Izuku turned to her with an unreadable expression. Yeah, Mom. I'm done with that fanboy phase. No point in keeping them around to rot. Might as well let some other kid have them. Inko stared at him, utterly shocked. Her son, the boy who once worshipped heroes All Might especially, was just letting it all go. Izuku, you used to love these. He shrugged. I used to, yeah. But I've changed, Mom. His black eyes held no hesitation, no attachment to the past. Besides, I have no need for these anymore. I've moved on. She wanted to protest, to ask him what had truly happened in those 3 years to make him so different, but the words wouldn't come. The buyer, meanwhile, looked between them awkwardly before clearing his throat. So do we have a deal? Izuku turned back to him, a small smirk forming. Of course. Let's talk price. Izuku leaned against his desk, arms crossed, as he faced the eager collector. His black eyes held an almost amused glint as he sized up the man. Alright, let's get down to business, Izuku said smoothly. For the entire collection, I'm asking for 5 million yen. The collector nearly choked. Wait, that's a bit steep, don't you think? He stammered, adjusting his glasses. I mean, I know these are rare, but Izuku raised a hand, cutting him off. Do you? He asked, his voice carrying the same calm authority as Aizen. He casually picked up one of the figures, a limited edition, signed All Might statue, and twirled it in his fingers. This alone is worth over 300,000 yen. It was never re-released, and there are barely any in circulation. He placed it down and gestured toward another set. This one. A full Hero Era card set, untouched, still in pristine condition. You'd be lucky to find these for less than 400,000 yen at an auction. The collector gulped as Izuku continued. And let's not forget the rare All Might signature, framed and authenticated. That alone pushes the price up. So, really, 5 million yen is a steal. The man hesitated, eyes darting between the collection and Izuku's unreadable face. 2 million yen, he tried. Izuku exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. I don't do charity, my friend. He tapped his fingers on the desk. 5 million. Take it or leave it. If you don't want it, I can find another buyer who does. The collector hesitated, then sighed. All right. 5 million it is. A smirk played on Izuku's lips. Smart choice. As the man transferred the money to Izuku's account, Inko just stood there, watching the entire exchange in shock. This wasn't the son she remembered. The old Izuku would have been shy, nervous, maybe even hesitant to part with his collection. But this Izuku. He was confident, composed, almost cold. After confirming the transfer, Izuku gestured toward the collection. They're all yours. Enjoy. The collector quickly packed everything up and left, still stunned by the deal. Once the door closed, Inko finally spoke. Izuku, are you really okay? Izuku turned to her, his black eyes calm but unreadable. Of course, Mom. Why wouldn't I be? She wanted to ask more, to push further, but something in his gaze told her that the Izuku who left 3 years ago wasn't the same one who had come back. Inko blinked in confusion, still processing Izuku's words. Wait, what do you mean you found a penthouse? She asked, her voice rising slightly. Where did you even get the money for that? Before she could press further, Izuku's phone rang. He smoothly pulled out an expensive iPhone smartphone, a limited edition luxury model that only the elite could afford. Inko's eyes widened at the sight of it. Without hesitation, Izuku answered the call, switching to fluent Korean with an effortless grace that left Inko completely lost. 10. Yes, everything is ready. I'll be in Japan for 10 months. Yeah, no problem. Proceed as planned. His voice was smooth, calculated, his tone carrying the same weight of authority he had used in his earlier negotiation. Inko stared, her mouth slightly open. Izuku, since when do you speak Korean? She finally asked as he ended the call. Izuku glanced at her, casually slipping his phone back into his pocket. Since 3 years ago. Inko crossed her arms, clearly flustered. And you just casually answer a phone call in a foreign language like it's nothing. Who were you even talking to? Izuku smirked slightly. Just business, Mom. Inko felt like her son had been replaced by someone else. The boy who once stuttered and idolized heroes was now standing in front of her, exuding confidence, wealth, and a presence that almost felt intimidating. Izuku, what exactly have you been doing these past 3 years? She whispered. Izuku chuckled lightly, walking over and placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, Mom. I've just been preparing for the future. Then, smoothly shifting the conversation back, he repeated, so, about the penthouse. Are you coming with me or not? Inko stood frozen, her mind struggling to process everything happening so quickly. What? A penthouse. Izuku, slow down, she stammered, but before she could protest further, Izuku simply sighed. Come on, Mom, stop overthinking it, he said smoothly, placing a firm yet gentle hand on her back. Before she could react, a luxury transporter pulled up in front of their apartment complex. The sight of the Rolls-Royce, sleek and pristine, sent her into another wave of shock. The driver, dressed in an elegant black uniform, stepped out and respectfully opened the door. The driver, dressed in an elegant black uniform, stepped out and respectfully opened the door. Young Mstr, the driver greeted with a slight bow. Inko's mouth opened, then closed, her brain failing to come up with words. Since when did her son have a personal driver? Since when did he own a Rolls-Royce? Izuku, on the other hand, acted as if this was the most normal thing in the world. Without hesitation, he gently grabbed his mother's wrist and led her toward the car. Izuku, wait. Inko tried to resist, but her son barely acknowledged her struggle as he smoothly guided her inside. As she sank into the plush leather seats, her body automatically reacted to the sheer comfort, but her mind was still in too much shock to properly function. She sat there, completely silent, staring at the luxurious interior while Izuku relaxed beside her, one arm lazily resting on the door. The driver closed the door and returned to his seat, the Rolls-Royce purring to life as they began their journey. The entire way, Inko said nothing. Not because she didn't have questions but because she had too many. As the Rolls-Royce smoothly came to a stop in front of an extravagant high-rise, the driver stepped out to open the door. Izuku casually got out, stretching a little before turning to his still frozen mother. Mom, we're here, he called, but Inko didn't respond. She was still stuck in her shocked daze, her eyes darting between the towering penthouse building before her and the luxurious car she was still seated in. Sighing, Izuku leaned down and gently shook her shoulder. Oi, Mom. Snap out of it. Inko jerked slightly, blinking rapidly as she finally seemed to return to reality. She looked at her son, then at the grand entrance of the building, then back at her son. And then, she narrowed her eyes. Izuku, she said in a dangerously low voice. What exactly have you been doing these past 3 years? Izuku raised an eyebrow at her sudden change in tone. I told you, I was training. Training. Inko scoffed, crossing her arms. Don't lie to me. How does training get you a Rolls-Royce? A penthouse. A personal driver. What illegal work have you been doing behind my back? Izuku blinked at her, then burst out laughing. Illegal work. Seriously. He wiped an imaginary tear from his eye, his voice still smooth but holding a clear hint of amusement. Mom, do you really think I'd go into some underground business or something? I don't know anymore. Inko huffed, clearly frustrated. One day, you're my sweet little Izuku, and the next, you disappear for 3 years and come back as some rich businessman. Do you have any idea how insane this all looks? Izuku tilted his head, his blackened eyes gleaming mischievously. So what, you'd rather I came back poor and struggling? Inko glared. Don't twist my words, young man. Izuku sighed, shaking his head. All right. Relax, Mom. I'll explain everything once we get inside. But I promise you, I haven't done anything illegal. Inko pursed her lips, still not fully convinced, but for now, she let out a deep breath. Fine. But if I find out you're lying, yeah, Izuku waved her off with a smirk, leading the way inside. Let's go before you pass out from the shock. As they stepped into the penthouse, Inko's eyes widened at the sheer luxury surrounding her. The high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows with a breathtaking view of the city, plush furniture, and sleek modern design all screamed wealth beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. Before she could even process it all, a group of transporters walked in, carrying boxes and bags. W8. Inko stammered, spinning to face Izuku. When did they even get to our old home? Izuku, who had casually taken off his jacket and tossed it onto the couch, looked at her with an amused expression. The moment we left. Inko's jaw dropped. The moment we left. But how? That should take days to arrange. Izuku chuckled, walking over to the kitchen counter and pouring himself a glass of water. Mom, you're underestimating how efficient money and proper planning can be. I had everything arranged in advance. The moment we stepped out of our old place, a team went in, packed everything, and had it transported here. Inko looked at the workers unloading their belongings, familiar furniture, her kitchenware, even the little decorations she had. In their old home, all neatly arranged in a lavish penthouse as if they had lived there for years. She turned back to her son, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. And the furniture. This place looks completely furnished. Izuku took a sip of his water, his smooth, Aizen-like voice effortlessly calm. That's because it is. I picked a penthouse that came fully furnished with high-end interior design. I just had them add in our personal belongings to make it feel more like home. Inko pressed a hand to her forehead, feeling lightheaded. Izuku, this is all too much. I don't even know what to say. Izuku set his glass down and smirked slightly. Then don't say anything, Mom. Just enjoy it. You deserve this. Inko really looked at him. Her baby boy had truly changed. He was taller, broader, and his entire presence was commanding yet effortless. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, it was like he had shed his old self and become something entirely new. And yet he was still her Izuku. She sighed, shaking her head. I guess I'll try. Izuku grinned, his usual cocky but smooth tone returning. Good. Now, how about we order some food? You need a break from cooking, and I could go for some good sushi. Inko let out a tired chuckle. Fine. But you're paying. Izuku laughed. I always do, Mom. Inko folded her arms, her sharp eyes locking onto Izuku as she sat on the plush white sofa in their new penthouse. All right, Izuku. Spill it. What exactly have you been doing these past 3 years? Izuku leaned back against the kitchen counter, swirling a glass of water in his hand. His black eyes, void of the emerald green they once had, held an unreadable expression. Business, Mom. I built a company. Inko raised a brow, clearly not buying it. Business? What kind of business? Izuku let out a small chuckle, his voice smooth and calm like he had anticipated this question. Online content creation. We manage influencers, models, streamers, and other digital creators. It's a global network, highly profitable. Inko blinked, slightly taken aback. Wait, so you're telling me you run an agency for online creators? Izuku nodded, keeping his expression relaxed. Yep. We handle branding, sponsorships, partnerships, and even merchandising. It's all above board, and it brings in good money. Inko stared at him, trying to read his face, but he was calm and composed, too calm. Something about the way he spoke, the ease with which he explained it, felt off. She narrowed her eyes. And you expect me to believe that's all you've been doing? Izuku gave her his signature smirk, a mix of amusement and confidence. Mom, come on. What else would I be doing? Inko opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't know why, but a chill ran down her spine. What if he wasn't telling her everything? Of course, she had no idea that her son was controlling multiple underground businesses, some legal, some not so much. Black market trading, high-stakes gambling, information brokerage, all under his iron grip. But he wasn't about to tell his mother that. Not yet. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Well, I don't fully understand it, but if it's legal and safe, then I won't stop you. Just promise me you're not getting involved in anything dangerous. Izuku's smirk didn't falter. Of course, Mom. I'd never do anything to put myself in danger. A complete lie. But one she needed to believe. For now. At night, Izuku leaned back in his chair, calm and composed, as he ate his food with perfect etiquette. The dining room of the penthouse was grand, the large glass windows showing the shimmering city lights outside. The expensive chandelier above them cast a warm glow over the table, where the entire Bakugo family sat. Mitsuki, Masaru, and, of course, Katsuki himself. Katsuki sat across from him, his eyes burning with barely contained rage. His teeth clenched every time he glanced at Izuku, who sat there completely unaffected, eating like this was just another normal dinner. It had been only a few hours since Katsuki realized the truth. The one who had saved him from that DMN slime villain, the one who had effortlessly restrained it and pulled him out like it was nothing, was none other than Izuku. Izuku Deku Midoriya. The same useless extra he used to bully. And now, he was sitting across from him, acting like he was the one in control. Katsuki's fingers twitched, his palm itching to explode something. Meanwhile, Mitsuki was laughing, sipping on wine, clearly impressed by Izuku's luxurious penthouse. DMN, brat. You really went all out, huh? A penthouse. Rolls-Royce. Expensive but decorations. I didn't know you had it in you. Izuku, still as calm as ever, simply smirked slightly before replying in his smooth, Aizen-like voice. I've changed, Mitsuki-san. I no longer have time to live as a weakling. Katsuki slammed his chopsticks down. Cut the CRP, Deku. His voice was low and threatening, but Izuku didn't even flinch. Instead, he slowly lifted his gaze, black eyes locking onto Katsuki's. It was terrifying. Gone was the timid, nervous, stuttering Deku he used to know. The person sitting across from him now was something else entirely. Izuku tilted his head slightly, smirk still present. Something wrong, Katsuki. Katsuki gritted his teeth. You. He wanted to say something. Anything. Demand answers. Demand an explanation for how the hell Deku became like this. But Izuku was just looking at him. And in that moment, Katsuki felt something he never thought he'd feel towards Deku. A deep, unsettling sense of inferiority. Izuku wasn't just stronger now. He wasn't just more confident. He had something else. A presence. A terrifying, commanding presence that made it feel like he was in complete control. The air felt heavier. Even Masaru, who usually stayed quiet, shifted uncomfortably. Inko, sensing the tension, quickly cleared her throat. So. Izuku, sweetie, do you want some more rice? Izuku finally broke eye contact with Katsuki, looking at his mother instead. His expression softened just slightly. Sure, Mom. That would be nice. Katsuki slammed his fist on the table. Oi. Don't ignore me, DMN Deku. Izuku, without even looking at him, simply reached for his cup of water, took a sip, and set it down calmly. Then, in that same smooth, unsettling tone, he spoke, Bakugo. If you're going to start barking, at least make sure you have the teeth to bite. The table went completely silent. Mitsuki's eyes widened, and even Masaru looked shocked. Katsuki froze, his hand clenched into a fist. His breath was heavy, but he couldn't speak. Izuku finally turned back to him, his smirk widening slightly. Eat your food, Katsuki. You'll need the energy for the entrance exam. And just like that, he went back to eating, as if the conversation never happened. Katsuki lunged forward, rage overtaking his senses. I'll kill you, DKU. His palm crackled with explosions as he launched himself across the table. But before he could even get close, schlick. A mass of black, writhing tendrils shot out from behind Izuku, twisting and coiling like a living shadow. The dark goo wrapped around Bakugo's arms, legs, and torso, lifting him clean off the ground. Katsuki's eyes widened in shock. The hell is this? He struggled, trying to ignite his explosions, but the tendrils tightened around him, locking his arms in place. Izuku didn't even move. Didn't even flinch. He simply sighed, tapping his fingers lightly against the table before speaking in that same calm, smooth voice. Remember one thing, Bakugo. His eyes, once a bright emerald green, were now pitch black, cold, and unreadable. This is my DMN house. Not yours. Not Aldera's. Not the playground where you used to act like a king. The black tendrils tightened, pulling Katsuki closer until his face was just inches from Izuku's. Izuku didn't even blink. So stay your butt down. Or I will make you do it like the DMN mutt you are. The entire table went silent. Masaru gulped, looking away. Mitsuki's jaw was slightly open, her grip on her wine glass tightening. Inko just stared, unsure whether to be horrified or proud. Katsuki's breath was heavy, his body struggling against the unbreakable grip of the black mass holding him. But no matter how much he fought, it didn't budge. It was stronger than him. Izuku, watching him struggle, simply tilted his head. Still got energy to fight. Katsuki gritted his teeth. His body shook with frustration. He wanted to explode. He wanted to break free. But deep inside, something in him was screaming at him to stop. Because for the first time in his life he knew he wasn't the strongest one in the room. Izuku gave a small, almost mocking smirk before flicking his wrist. The black tendrils instantly released, dropping Katsuki back onto the ground with a loud thud. Katsuki grunted, pushing himself up, but didn't attack again. He simply glared, his eyes filled with rage and confusion. Izuku, now fully uninterested, simply picked up his glass of water, taking a slow sip before placing it back down. Good boy. The room stayed dead silent. After dinner, as the Bakugo family stepped out of the luxurious penthouse, the atmosphere was tense. Katsuki's fists were clenched, his jaw tight as he walked ahead, still fuming from what had just happened. TCH. That DMN Deku. Thinks he's all high and mighty now. Katsuki muttered under his breath, his anger barely contained. Just as he was about to storm off, smack. Mitsuki's palm met the back of his head with full force, sending him stumbling forward. Ow. The hell, old hag. Katsuki turned, glaring at his mother. Mitsuki's expression was dead serious. She held up her phone, flipping the screen toward Katsuki. You dumbass. Do you have any idea how expensive this place is? You nearly broke something in a goddamn penthouse. Do you think I'm gonna pay for it if you do? Katsuki blinked, momentarily confused, before looking down at the property value she was showing him. His eyes widened in shock. The number was staggering. This place wasn't just expensive, it was on a whole different level. The hell kind of money is Deku making to afford this? Katsuki yelled, still staring at the digits. Mitsuki clicked her tongue. That's what I want to know too. She crossed her arms. But what I do know is that if you broke even one DMN thing in there, I would have taken it out of your savings, brat. You're lucky you just embarrassed yourself instead. Masaru, standing quietly beside them, nodded. Maybe you should be more careful, Katsuki. Katsuki's eye twitched. He clenched his fists, his pride burning. TCH, whatever. Like I give a DMN about that DMN nerd's fancy house. Mitsuki smirked. Yeah. 'Cause it sure looked like he had you wrapped up like a Christmas present back there. Katsuki's face turned red with anger. Shut up. Mitsuki just laughed, dragging her son by the collar as they walked away. Next time, try using your DMN brain before picking a fight, brat. Katsuki grumbled, but deep inside, something about the way Deku looked down at him so easily still lingered in his mind. Chapter 5 Chapter 4 Entrance Exam in U. A first day 10 months later, entrance exam day. The sun was high in the sky, casting its golden glow over the massive high school campus. Students from all over Japan had gathered, their eyes filled with determination, nerves, and excitement. Among them, Izuku Midoriya stood tall. 188 centimeters, a broad yet lean muscular build, draped in a sleek black outfit, his presence radiating a silent authority. His once bright emerald eyes were now a cold abyss of black, his expression calm, unreadable. Standing near the gate, Katsuki Bakugo cracked his knuckles, his signature scowl deepening as he locked eyes on Izuku. Deku, he muttered under his breath, memories of their last encounter flashing in his mind. The humiliation. The way Deku looked down on him without even trying. TCH, his glare hardened. You better enjoy your DMN time at the top while it lasts, nerd. He clenched his fists, his palms sparking with tiny explosions. Because after today, I'm taking you down. Izuku, still leaning against the gate's steel frame, didn't even turn to acknowledge him. His voice, now deep and smooth like Aizen's, cut through the air with effortless composure. You're still talking big, Bakugo. I hope for your sake, you've actually gotten stronger. A vein popped in Bakugo's forehead. The hell did you just say? But before he could explode, the school speakers blared to life. All applicants, please proceed inside. The entrance exam is about to begin. With a final, cold smirk, Izuku turned, hands in his pockets, and walked into you, without another word. This was it. The beginning of a new era. As the students gathered inside the massive auditorium, the air was filled with a mixture of nervous whispers and excited murmurs. Some were stretching, others checking their notes, but one thing was clear: everyone here had the same goal. To prove they were worthy of UA high school. At the front of the stage, Present Mike stepped forward, his usual loud and energetic personality in full force. Welcome, future heroes, his voice boomed through the speakers, causing a few students to flinch. Are you ready to kick some robot butt? The crowd remained mostly silent, save for a few enthusiastic students. Izuku, however, remained completely still, his expression unreadable. Seated nearby, Tenya Ida, the student with glasses and a disciplined demeanor, suddenly stood up, adjusting his uniform before raising his hand. Excuse me, he called out, cutting through the silence. There appears to be an inconsistency in the test explanation. The pamphlet states there are 3 types of villain bots, but on the screen, there is a 4th. Before he could continue, Present Mike waved a hand. Whoa there, speedster. No need to worry. That 4th bot is just a 0-pointer, meaning it's a waste of your time. Move on, got it. Ida slowly nodded, though he shot a glance towards Izuku, who hadn't reacted at all during the explanation. Unlike other students who were jittery, Midoriya simply sat there, completely calm. Something about him felt off. Not like he was nervous. Not like he was scared. But like he already knew the outcome of this exam. Like he had already won. Exam Site B, the battlefield. As the massive gates leading to the cityscape opened, the students prepared themselves for the battle ahead. Some stretched, others bounced on their feet, getting into the mindset of a warrior. Among them, Izuku stood in the back, hands in his pockets, his black eyes scanning the area with an almost bored expression. Bakugo was a few meters ahead, gritting his teeth, explosions crackling from his hands. I don't care about these extras, Bakugo muttered to himself. The only one I need to crush today is Deku. As the tension built, a countdown flashed above the gate. 3. Izuku rolled his neck, his black tendrils of abyss subtly shifting beneath his clothes. 2. His body tensed slightly, though his face remained completely composed. 1. Beep. The gates slammed open. G.O. Present Mix's voice echoed across the battlefield. The students rushed forward, some using their quirks, others sprinting with all their might. Bakugo blasted off, immediately targeting a large 3-pointer, his hands glowing with an explosion. Boom! The robot was destroyed in seconds. Others scattered, fighting their own enemies, trying to rack up points. But Izuku. He hadn't moved. While the rest of the students were scrambling to attack, he simply walked forward at a slow, casual pace, his black coat billowing slightly in the artificial wind. A massive 1-pointer suddenly charged at him, its metal arms raised, prepared to crush him in an instant. The students around him gasped. He's not moving. He's gonna get crushed. But just as the robot's massive fists came crashing down, Izuku vanished. What? Before anyone could even blink, he reappeared above the robot, his body flipping effortlessly through the air. Then, with a calm expression, he extended his hand forward. Abyss consume. A surge of black tendrils erupted from his palm, slamming into the robot's chest and tearing through its metal frame like it was made of paper. Within seconds, the massive machine was nothing but scraps, absorbed into the writhing black mass that formed and retracted just as quickly. Silence. Everyone around him stopped, watching in shock. Izuku exhaled, lowering his hand. Too easy. Then, before the other students could even process what they saw, he disappeared again. The scoreboard skyrockets while the others were struggling against the robots. Izuku was a blur of destruction. A two-pointer lunged at him. He twisted mid-air, formed a massive black blade from his arm, and cleaved it in half in a single slide. A three-pointer opened fire with machine guns. Izuku simply dodged everything, weaving through bullets like water before tearing off its head with pure strength. One after another, the robots fell. And with each defeat, his score climbed higher and higher. The students watching from afar were stunned. Who the hell is that guy? He's destroying everything like it's nothing. Even Present Mike and the other pro heroes monitoring the exam were speechless. Nizu, my man, Present Mike said, glancing at the tiny principal. You sure this kid's not a pro hero in disguise? Nizu only chuckled. Oh no, he's just talented. Aizawa, who had been silently observing, narrowed his eyes. That's not talent. That's experience. The zero-pointer appears just as Izuku was about to end the exam with the highest score. The ground suddenly began to tremble. A massive shadow loomed over the battlefield. The zero-pointer. The colossal machine roared to life, towering over the fake city, its mechanical eyes glowing menacingly. Students screamed and ran, realizing they had no chance against such a monster. TCH. A waste of time, Izuku muttered, turning to leave. That is, until he heard a scream. Turning his head slightly, he saw Ochako Uraraka trapped under a large pile of rubble. She was struggling, her leg pinned beneath the heavy debris. Help, she called out, pain in her voice. The other students hesitated. But Izuku. He sighed. Abyss. With a single thought, his black tendrils shot out, wrapped around the rubble, and effortlessly lifted it off her. Ochako looked up in awe. "Wo, you saved me." After saving Ochako, Izuku floated into the sky, his presence commanding the very elements themselves. The bright, artificial sky above the U.A. exam cityscape darkened unnaturally, thick storm clouds swirling into existence. The temperature dropped instantly, the winds howling like a furious beast. The other students stopped running, frozen in place as they gazed in horror and awe at what was happening. Even the pro heroes watching from the control room felt their breath catch. High above, Izuku's eyes glowed with a menacing intensity, his voice turning cold, sharp, and calculating, eerily similar to Sosuke Aizen from Bleach. Begone with the thunder. He raised a single hand, and in that moment the storm answered. A deep rumbling filled the air as the clouds twisted and crackled with intense electricity. Then boom. A massive bolt of lightning descended from the heavens, splitting into two gigantic creatures made of pure, blinding electricity. Twin lightning Kirin. Their roars echoed across the battlefield, shaking the earth itself. Their bodies crackled with unimaginable voltage, their eyes filled with nothing but pure destructive power. The students.